What if success after school has less to do with your ATAR and more to do with what you do next? We're taking More Than a Score live, bringing together inspiring people with very different pathways to success. Come hear the honest stories, the unexpected turns, and the lessons that school results simply cannot measure. Join us live in Mornington, September 9th. For more information, head to our Instagram at More Than a Score Pod.
The life I had to that point almost got me to boiling point of seeing that moment where what are we doing on this earth? Like why are we all just plodding along and not thinking about why are we here? I didn't have that moment at 17. I had it at 34, and I think I needed that moment to really bring me into this work fully.
What if you worked really hard, got an incredible score, and still felt lost about what comes next? Well, this episode's for you. Our guest is Felicity Pountney. She left an academic Melbourne school with a really high score and still felt that she'd fallen short. In this conversation, she unpacks something we hear from so many of our listeners and friends. The trap of treating that score, grade, measurement like currency you're obliged to spend. It actually owns you. You end up choosing subjects or courses for the number instead of the things that actually light you up. In this episode, Flick is honest about the regret that can cause, and just as honest about why none of her path was ever actually wasted.
You'll hear how a chartered accountant became a doula, and the 3 conversations that changed everything, including one with a yoga teacher she admits she basically stalked. Flick shares her checklist of 3 for knowing when a job is worth staying in, why the skill school tried to quieten became her superpower, and the small first step for anyone who knows they need a change but feels scared to make it. Her definition of success now? Simply time. There's real hope in this one. This is Flick Pountney, and this is More Than a Score.
It's lovely to have you on. We have been trying to get you on this podcast for quite a while. We finally made it work. I am very lucky enough to get to do the introductions for our wonderful guests. Community Connector Champion, the bringer of fun, bubbly, dynamic, kind and driven. Not your typical chartered accountant, not a numbers cruncher, but previously was one, now turned prenatal yoga and hypnobirthing educator and doula. An adventurer who has nearly been to every continent, a person who has made a significant shift in her path against scores and accolades. A mum of 3, Felicity Flick Pountney, welcome to More Than a Score. When you think back to your time as school finished, the end of school, were you happy with your score?
Do you know what? I wasn't. And I don't really know why, because when I look back at it now, I should have been. I went to a school that was very academic, and there was a lot of focus on not only your score, but where you went to university. So it was an all-girls Catholic school in Melbourne, and there was a lot of talk of, you're the cream of the crop. You need to go to Melbourne or Monash. And I had my heart set on going to Melbourne Uni, and I think I was a point shy of the double degree I wanted to go to or get into. So no, I wasn't happy with my score. I wanted to do commerce science because all throughout my year 11, year 12, I focused on science subjects. I loved biology, chemistry, maths, loved learning. I thought that's where I want to go, but I also knew I didn't want to be a lab rat or a teacher. So when I had the choice then, I think to get into comp sci I was 96 or 97. I think I got 95, just shy of 95. I then made the decision, look, I won't do science flat because my brother was doing that at Monash, and he said, look, Flick, there's a lot of time in the lab and didn't think I'd love that. And he said, you'll love the content, but I don't think you'll love the amount of time you're spending in labs. So I thought, do you know what, I'll do commerce. I didn't really know what commerce was.
I still don't think really.
Yeah, can you help me understand what is commerce?
I just wanted to say too, science. I did 2 science subjects. I did a double degree. So I didn't even do the 4 science subjects. Every science had a 3-hour lab a week. So I had 6 hours of labs, and that was only doing half the science. Can you imagine how much time you would have spent in the lab?
I know.
Do you get your own lab coat the whole semester?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
everyone claims everyone. All right.
No, you buy your own one. It's yours.
Oh, you have to buy one?
Yeah.
They don't...
They do not provide them.
See, I would have liked that.
I wonder what the commerce is around the lab coats.
Oh, sorry, you didn't get a lab coat in commerce. But yeah, so I went with commerce, not really knowing what it was, and probably in my heart of hearts knew it's not really what I wanted to do. I felt this kind of propulsion to do something businessy. At the time, I had in my head a few comments. You have to work in a man's world, which is a really interesting now I reflect back on it. I mean, this is 1998 that I finished school. I had a strong force behind me and some commentary telling me you need to work in a man's world. So I thought one way to do that was in business. So went to Melbourne Uni, had an absolute blast, thinking I would switch into commerce science. Obviously, the more time I spent in pubs and less time studying. I did look into changing into commerce science and or commerce property, and then decided against it before the vultures that were the professional services firms started coming to uni and dangling carrots of grad programs and things to do post your bachelor degree.
You just said there that you sort of knew commerce wasn't actually for you.
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Well, I didn't really know what it was. It's funny, isn't it? It had all these courses when you're doing your preferences. You're like, yeah, that sounds okay. Should have in reality gone down into more nutrition, dietetics. That's what I was really interested in. I just, at the time, I genuinely don't know why I ended up in commerce. I didn't particularly love accounting or finance or anything businessy that we'd done at school. But I think the vocations coming out of my passions, as in the sciencey stuff, none of it landed. And when I was looking at, I looked at physio, I looked at dietetics. I looked at a whole range of things and then I just landed on business. I don't know. I actually don't know why in hindsight. I think I thought it would just be a really good starter for whatever I want to do post that. I always had in my mind there'll always be a way to get into more of that sciencey side of things, but it'll be a good baseline to have the business end under my belt.
I really want to know more about this underlying belief, feeling, rhetoric around you should be in a man's world. I'm really interested in where that comes from, how that's your interpretation, why business is a man's, quote unquote, man's world. I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, it actually came from my mum, which is really interesting. She was a nurse, a night duty nurse, so worked incredibly hard her whole life. I actually don't know how she did it, to be honest. They work all through the night. I don't know when she slept. She'd come home at 7 a.m, be there for the school morning. We'd always just walk to primary school. And then she'd be up again when we got home and off again. So it's kind of crazy to think about how that even operated in our family. But it did come from her. She was very much she'd say all the time, just go for it. Just go and do something that is going to light you up. You don't have to be defined by women-led vocations. And maybe at the time that was something just propelling from her own, life, where obviously back when they were coming into their careers, it was either nurses or teachers or nuns in our family. There were a few nuns. So it's crazy when you think about, maybe their point of view and then seeing this opening of vocations to women that really we can do whatever we want. I think she didn't want me ever to be limited by there is only one pathway for women. Go out there and explore. And beneath all of that was this huge motivation to travel. Around our dinner table from mum and dad was just this underlying desire for all of us, there's 4 kids in our family, to travel and see the world. Whatever you do, that is a non-negotiable. And so that instilled into all of us also sort of start to ring some bells of, well, how can we move around the world? Can we take a vocation around the world? And I think she saw, and I saw in the end, that business or commerce was a really good way to do that.
That's so interesting. It reminds me of a story of a friend of mine who did science, was in research and wanted to actually go into nursing. And I think she saw her mum. Her mum was a nurse and she really admired her mum. And her mum said, don't do nursing, be the doctor, because that's how you get to make the greatest change. And it's just interesting how that then shifted her entire path because, I think at the time, maybe like your mum, nursing was seen as not being able to make the difference. I don't know if that's true now, but it's interesting how our experience then encourages others to see jobs in certain ways.
So you're getting this message from home about backing yourself to try things, but to consider there's different choices out there. There's this instilled love of adventure and doing things. And at the same time, you're in a school setting with a cohort, it sounds like,
Yep.
where there was less defined options. It was, well, I shouldn't say less, less optionality. Like you actually had two choices. It was you should go to uni,
Well, yeah, it was
Melbourne Uni or Monash.
Monash. That's how it felt for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was everyone's experience, but I had very, very high expectations on myself. I truly don't believe if I had have got, 99.99, if I would have been happy. It's, an A was never good enough for me. It had to be an A+. So that's where that disappointment first came from, because I thought, gosh, what if I can't get into where I feel like I need to go? And that had to be one of those two universities. So the school really encouraged us to follow our passions to a point. But when I look back at, when we're doing our subject selection and things like that, there was a strong focus on, well, what is going to get you the best score? So, even when I look at my subject choice, I was so passionate about drama, about sport, about PE, and I ended up doing sort of my elective subjects as Japanese and music, which boosts your score, which, in hindsight, I should have just kept going with drama, In terms of language, I didn't love Japanese. I should have kept going with Italian. But it was in that moment of, well, your grades are okay at everything. They're all kind of on a par. Let's put you into, okay, how are you going to get that boost? So certainly I have regret around those subject selections. The science stuff was great, but certainly those sort of peripheral subjects on the side, I should have probably focused on my passions rather than what was going to elevate that score.
So Flick, would it be fair to say that there was a real push for you about choosing things based on the score and a certain pathway for jobs or titles versus the things that you were genuinely interested in?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
And it's funny, isn't it, when you reflect back on your pathway to where you are now, because when I was in it and when I was doing commerce, I didn't regret it. I had a great time. We're at uni and we had a great time. I had a great group of mates at uni, a lot of friends from school and brother schools and everything came. And so, the social aspect was awesome. And then that course, whilst it wasn't something that I was particularly passionate about, and certainly the direction I went in accounting was not a passion. What it then opened up for me in terms of the doors it opened for everything else I wanted to do was the best pathway for me to do that. So once I was, overseas and utilising the skills I got from doing chartered accountancy and from doing that degree, I never regretted that I had done that because of what it opened up for me overseas.
Yeah. We talk too about non-examples, right? They're just as good sometimes as the examples that you want to follow. Like doing the thing and going, oh, this really doesn't feel good. I don't feel like this is what I want to do long term. It's like, okay, well, that's given you a clue just as much as the thing that lights you up.
Hold on to that idea, because I know you've spoken about this idea of the 3 checklists you have when it comes. Hold on to that for when we come later on to your pathway and the jobs. But recently we've had someone reach out to us about this idea of peaking in high school where you get a high score, but then you almost feel stuck. So a score of around 95, like that's near perfect. Like that's genuinely an incredible score. As someone who received it, was there a feeling of pressure about what you then did with your next steps?
Absolutely. Remember looking at a course somewhere else and thinking, but I got a score higher than that, so I'm not going to do, I think it was naturopathy or there was something else in the dietetic sort of range. I was like, I'm not going to do that because I've got this score, so I need to utilise it to its full potential of what the university would grade me at in welcoming me into that university for that score, which is mad, right? Like I have such respect for people who get a score and go, well, it doesn't actually matter. I'm still going to do what I love. I mean, that comes internally as well. That's a confidence that you have internally. But I wish school didn't put so much emphasis on, well, you got this particular score, therefore you must go to a course that equates to that score in the world of the university. Because it shouldn't really matter. Like, yes, if you're trying to go to university for a particular course and that score equates to that, fantastic, lucky you that worked out. But if there's a course elsewhere that doesn't even require a score, or you want to go and do an apprenticeship, do something that's actually going to light you up, Why do we feel this need to validate our choice to match that score? It's wrong.
Even that wording that you just said then, so you needed to use the score's potential.
Yes.
Like almost as if it was a thing that was driving you instead of around the other way. If you, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to someone that's listening that either got that high score or they're currently sitting there going through this now feeling stuck because they need to use that high score's potential and they're just a bit stuck?
Well, I genuinely think, and this is certainly true of all my school friends particularly, that you end up where you're going to end up. I think once you all grow up, move away from the scores, move away from this need to prove that you are as good as that score in a way, and that's why you went down that road, which is certainly what I did. I think it runs out of time. I think it runs out of, what's the word?
Like currency?
Currency, yeah. And that currency doesn't mean anything. Yeah, so certainly once you leave Australia, it doesn't mean anything. And it's really interesting overseas, for example, like in the UK, the idea of a vocational degree doesn't exist like it does here. I feel like here, or certainly when I was going through the school system, it was, I'm going to go and study that course so I can become more vocational. Whereas in the UK, everyone I met when I lived there, the courses that they did were purely from a passion. You know, it's like, what did you study? Well, no, people would say to me, what did you study? I said, I studied accounting and finance. They're like, what? What did you study? Oh, I studied, you know, the politics of World War II, or I studied Renaissance art, or, you know, whatever it was came from a passion deep down in them. And then they would do bridging courses to get into a vocation.
Yeah.
So I feel like in Australia, it's around the other way a little bit. You know, we do these courses to get the job rather than go and learn and work out then how am I going to apply that in some kind of job. So my advice to people is, if you can, it'd be very hard not to use that score as currency. But if you can, know that at the end of the day, what is important is to follow what actually lights you up. Having said that, though, I don't know if I would have had the experiences I've had in terms of travel if I didn't go down that path, because what it opened up for me was the ability to get a job really easily overseas, and that for me was a real priority. So it afforded me the option to go and utilise, yes, maybe a job I didn't love, but it made me able to follow my true passion of seeing the world.
Yeah.
So there's kind of two parts to it.
Based on what you're saying, there's sort of three things, which is, and this is me checking, I was listening. So you've got access to bridging courses. So you're not necessarily stuck. There could be bridging courses, starting to be aware of that there are other pathways and your interests that couldn't help with them. The third thing was to help someone that's like, be aware that there are benefits in what you're currently doing, like if you choose to look for them.
Yes, and I think as well, you know, and I didn't hate the course or anything. It wasn't like I was sitting there thinking this is awful and I want to do something else. In the moment, it was fine. And then when I left university and did a grad program at PricewaterhouseCoopers, you know, I didn't hate that either. You know, I'm not the sort of person who will do something that I hate just because of it, because I see in 5 years' time this might help me. I never knew what my next step was. But in hindsight, you know, 20 years on, I look back and I go, oh, could I have just gone and done something in nutrition or in women's health, which is always what I've been interested in. But I definitely had this overarching pressure of, no, I must go and make a stamp in the world. And I felt like in business I could make a stamp.
Well, maybe now's a good segue for that, to talk about that checklist of three that you said it was all right for us to mention, that you spoke about off air, but you said it was all right to mention. Can you talk the listener through what's that checklist of three that you used to work out if things were good enough or a job was good enough? Yeah,
so to give some context, what we were talking about was working overseas. I was working in the London office of Sony PlayStation, so their head office in the UK. And Sony PlayStation was such a progressive place to work. It was full of cowboys. It was a really fun place to work. And funnily enough, when I was overseas and meeting lots of people, of course, you know, the first thing everyone asks is, you know, what do you do? And I would kind of under my breath, I'm an accountant. And quickly followed up with, but I work at this amazing place, which is in an incredible location. It was right in the middle of London in Soho. So right next to Regent's Park, all the shopping districts. I had all these shops at my disposal. I could ride my bike to work. So the location was perfect. The people were awesome. Like the best bunch. I've made lifelong friends there. I'm just giggling even thinking about the people I met there. We just had an absolute cracker of a time. And I was there for 9 years, so really immersed myself into the place. And, you know, even the actual building was brilliant. So many perks to the place. I mean, there were PlayStations everywhere, which I couldn't have given a toss about. I actually hate PlayStations. I hate gaming. But it had a bar that was really important to me. It had a restaurant downstairs, which was really fun. And just proximity, right? So the things for me were the checklist. I love the place, actual physical place I work, the location of the place I work. I adored the people that I worked with. We just had an absolute blast. It also afforded me to go traveling a lot with work. So that was a huge bonus. And that was part of my actual role, was to travel a lot with work around Europe and Australia. And then there was the actual work itself. So those three things, yes. I mean, I didn't mind the work. It wasn't appalling. And I was in sort of strategy and risk. I was very much not a number cruncher. I was more in the operational side of finance, if that makes sense. So I wasn't sitting there doing debits and credits, which was not my jam anyway.
So not the numbers.
Not the numbers,
Okay.
no. So
Strategy,
planning, risk management. So, you know, if I had have had a checklist of three, location, people, and the actual work, I always justified not loving what I did every day, that two out of three ain't bad.
So you loved the location, you loved the actual setting.
Yep.
And then the people and then that.
People were everything.
Yeah, and then those benefits within it.
Yeah. And I got to travel and meet so many people from different countries and go and stay for weeks in different countries, learning about the operations of their businesses and then, you know, breaking it down. How could we strategize and look at the risks of their business and how could we, you know, work with other subsidiaries to make it more cohesive around Europe? So that work was brilliant. So now on reflection, when I'm talking about the work, it's actually kind of lighting me up because I loved that part of the work. I didn't love going back to finance and seeing everyone doing their debits and credits.
Yeah.
And actually, I didn't like saying that I was an accountant. That had a lot to do with it too, which is definitely an ego thing, right? It's because people would say, how on earth are you an accountant? I'm like, I don't actually.
Well, what's an accountant supposed to be?
Well, I think that's the thing as well. People think accountants.
I have in my mind.
Yeah,
I know my dad's
I get a sense of
your dad, yeah. I thought that accountant.
And I would say
He's great.
no, but I think if I consider the kinds of people you are, I would say you're quite different.
There's a spectrum.
There's definitely a spectrum of accountants. I'm probably right on the very edge of what's not a great accountant. And it was funny, when I met Tom, actually, my husband, he just laughed, I think, when I told him I was an accountant.
Yeah.
So he was like, what? What do you even mean? I mean, when we met at a charity ball for Movember, this is in London as well, he actually thought, and I didn't say this, he thought I told him I was a fashion designer. And that I would see that. And that I was from New Zealand. And that I was 22. I was actually 29, an accountant from Australia. So I don't know how he
must be pretty bad with accents, though.
But he talks about it all the time. He's like, that's what you told me. That's what hooked me. I was like, I did not say that. I don't know why.
How many beers?
Yeah, I think there'd be a few.
Yeah.
So
Well, so Flick, let's jump to the pathway because we've sort of jumped around a little bit. And I think to help the person listening get an understanding of this person that was facing a message from school that you need to perform and do well.
Yep.
You get this incredible score, but it didn't feel enough. You just missed out on this double degree that you thought you should go for. But you've gone from school to do a Bachelor of Commerce. Thank you for sort of explaining what commerce is now. That's thank you. And as part of that, you then said, when you're doing your degree, you start to get the different groups coming out, the different big four coming out, presenting, trying to get these graduates. So they come out. You then join PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Yes.
So you then, while you're working there, you complete your postgrad, become a chartered accountant, a CA. You then move to join Sony head office. So you work for them, Sony PlayStation, and working there for 11 years. But you travel around South America with your now husband. You shift from this corporate chartered accountancy work to be a pre and postnatal yoga teacher. You then also start a business called Avocado Baby in your living room. This is before COVID. COVID happens, you then have to make a shift. And then you continue your change in your path to move into hypnobirthing and also becoming, just recently, a doula. Walk us through the road from chartered accountant at PwC to founding Avocado Baby? Because that's quite a turn.
I don't tell anyone I was an accountant. It's so funny. It seems like such a while ago.
But yeah, you did it for quite a long time. Like it wasn't like a flash in the pan.
No, it's crazy, isn't it? Yes. So the change happened. Do you know, Tom in many ways was very, what's the word?
Pivotal.
There you go. Tom was very pivotal in that.
Did you see how proud Laura was then? She was like, nailed it. English teacher.
Trying to work out what word you need.
Yes, thank you. I need a few of those.
Yeah.
Tom was really pivotal in that because when I met him, as I said,
as the fashion designer, which I clearly wasn't,
it became harder and harder to say I was an accountant because I knew that's not what I was destined to be. It just kind of all fell into place. I happened to find this incredible job at Sony and, you know, as I said to you, it afforded me so much great travel that it was just perfect for that moment.
And for context, Tom was actually living out his dream at that point, wasn't he, as a sports writer?
And Tom was a sports writer. And funnily enough, Tom had a very different pathway because he knew as a young kid he wanted to be a sports writer, and lo and behold, he just followed his passion. Wouldn't have mattered what score he got. He would have done that regardless because that's how he is. He's very focused and he would have followed that path regardless. So when we went travelling overseas around South America, we were feral. We just had a backpack and a tent, a two-man tent, travelling around South America. It was very close quarters for a long time. We spoke a lot in that year about what on earth do we really want to do? You know, actually, where do we want to live? We were getting married as soon as we got back from that year. And it wasn't until we got back that we got married and I fell pregnant very quickly. And I actually went back to Sony, managed to sneak another contract in and head back. And when I fell pregnant, to be honest, everything shifted. It was like and now we understand more about matrescence, which is that biological social shift in women as soon as they become pregnant. It's not once you become a mother, but once you're actually pregnant, this shift happens. And I was still working at Sony and I had this moment where I was in a meeting in a fishbowl, looking at everyone around me in the finance department, tapping away on their computers. And I turned to the board members and said out loud, "Do any of you wonder what we're actually doing here? What are we doing? What are we doing?" Because I saw everyone just in front of a screen tapping and I thought, this is not heart-led work. There is no point to any of this. And obviously there is, because they all had shareholders and that was always the answer. There's shareholders and that's who we're answerable to. I thought, I just can't be part of this anymore. This is not me. And I've known this is not me and I can't keep justifying it with, but I love what this life is giving me in terms of those other passions, in terms of travel, etc. So as a pregnant girl, I started to seek out pregnancy yoga because I couldn't run anymore. After about 20 weeks, I had to stop running. And Tom and I were really avid runners and cyclists. We got into triathlons and I just couldn't run anymore. Just, we've got a big belly out front.
Yeah.
There comes a time when you can't do that kind of exercise anymore. And I found this incredible prenatal yoga teacher and I kind of stalked her around a little bit. She just had the most incredible energy. She just lit me up and I just was eating up her words and it just sparked something in me that hadn't been sparked before. And we became quite close, like quite friendly and I would just follow her around to her locations. And I said to her,
was she aware that you were doing it?
Oh, yeah, I would openly tell her, I'm stalking you around. It's just like,
at least you're honest.
At least I'm honest. I said to her, yeah, how did you do this? How did you follow this path? And she'd always been a yogi and so quite different to me. I'd always enjoyed yoga, but I'm certainly not a yogi in the traditional sense. And she said, Felicity, you should do this. You love this. And I said, oh God, I could never do something like this. And she said, yeah, you could. You could. So it was such a pivotal moment when she said that because I was like, oh, could I? And then Tom and I did a hypnobirthing course because we obviously had friends over there, but not many friends who had babies in London. I didn't have my family there except for my brother. He still lives there. And obviously Tom's family were absolutely wonderful, but they weren't in London. So we didn't have people right, in our street looking after us or people we could talk to about having babies away from your maternal family. And we did this hypnobirthing course. I remember it was in a tunnel, a converted tunnel. It was freezing. It was on a concrete floor with this awesome lady. And she, again, the weekend course we did just lit us both up. And especially Tom, actually, he walked out and he was like, that was just incredible. And I turned to Tom and it was actually really emotional. We just bonded so much in this course. And it's not just about birth, it's so much more about you as people and becoming parents, and she really again encapsulated that for us in that weekend. It was a whole immersive weekend. And I remember walking out of that course and I turned to Tom and I said, Tommy, if this shit works, if what we've just learned works, I'm going to teach this. And I thought he would never put me down or say, oh no, you won't, or he just turned around and he said, Flick, if this shit works, I will teach it with you. Like he loved it so much. And I said, I don't know how many birth educators and men taught me. He said, I don't care. I'll do it with you. And I was like, okay. So that kind of planted the seed for us. And then we went and had a really beautiful birth with our first baby over there in the UK. It was, it came with its complexities, but it was a really beautiful birth. And as soon as we'd had her sort of 2 or 3 months in, I started to look down, well, how could I possibly do this? Is there a pathway for me to start teaching pregnancy yoga? And you had to become a fully fledged yoga teacher to be able to then specialise. So I found a mentor, this amazing other yoga teacher, and I remember meeting with her and she said, look, to become a fully fledged yoga teacher, it's a 10-week immersive, intensive course where you have to come to the studio for weekends. And I was breastfeeding a new baby, so I was like, oh, I can't do that. And she said, look, let's meet for a coffee. If we have a connection, I will mentor you privately. And she said, I don't do this often. I've only done it once before, but it has to be a strong connection for me to do this because I'd come to your home, you've got a brand new baby. And I met her, Ellie, she was just beautiful. And she said, let's do it. So about 3 months into Bella's little life, I started studying, and it's a really self-exploratory course. It's very emotional. It's full on when you're learning to become a yoga teacher.
And I can only imagine what's happening to you hormonally.
Oh,
just had pain. My gosh,
it's a mess.
It's so
it's full on. And I was, exclusive with breastfeeding, and Tom would help as much as humanly possible, just running Bella in for feeds and then running out again. And it was a whole family thing. It wasn't just me. But to do a yoga teacher training course, it's not just about what everyone assumes it is, just learning how to teach poses. It's so much more. So that for me was a really beautiful time, but very taxing on me personally. And then we made the big decision to move back to Australia after about 9 months. So we did some travel on the way back with Bella, and as soon as we arrived back in Australia, we looked up how I could specialise in pregnancy and postnatal. So there was a course up in Byron Bay. So we actually went straight to that course on landing from Australia so I could get that done before we kind of put our roots back down in Melbourne. And that was a 10-day immersive course as well. And my God, if I thought the first yoga teacher training was full on, this was just next level, because you're learning how to be with women specifically, you're learning how to be with pregnant women specifically. And because I just had a baby myself, I felt all the feels that we were trying to help yoga teachers guide women through this phase of their life. So for me, it was one of the most powerful courses I've ever experienced. I was a bit of a mess, to be honest. I was holding it together really well as a mum, I felt. And then that course just, to be honest, just tore me apart. I actually walked out of it. I couldn't move my upper body. I had a visceral manifestation in my body after doing that course. I couldn't move. My neck was completely cranked to one side. It was like my body just went to this rigid state as a reaction to the emotional releases that we were bringing to the fold to help women when you're on the other side, when you are a pregnancy teacher or a postnatal teacher. So it was a really big shift for me from going from very structured learning in all my years of education to a very heart-led space, and it just cracked something open in me, and I thought, this is it.
You've gone from one end to another end almost. It sounds like, of really corporate, structured.
Yeah,
exactly right.
Male dominated.
A lot of routine, all of that. And then to this other end. So I'm really interested to know What did you discover about yourself as you made that shift?
I really discovered that this ethos that I had to work in a male-dominated world, which I know, and now saying that out loud does seem really strange, made me realise, my God, that's never where I should have been. I should have always been with women, and I'm going to cry, and then I didn't regret for a minute that I'd done all of that because of what, I found Tom there, and I came home from London. I went to London with a backpack and my best mate, and I came home with this incredible 12 years doing what I always wanted to do, and I didn't regret a day of my time in the UK. Not a day. I had the best time. I really found myself in the UK. I loved the anonymity. I loved just being myself in this world where no one knows who you are. And then I met this extraordinary man, and we got married over there, and I brought him back with a baby. And for me, I was just so proud of everything I'd done over there. But I always knew there was more in terms of what I actually was meant to do. And it felt like, and now I've found this.
It set you up so that you could do.
Yeah, and it made me appreciate it so much more that, yes, that first, was it 15, 16 years of my career were in this other set. And I loved it too. So I don't have any regrets. And I'm really proud that I don't have regrets about that. Yes, I didn't like saying an Oz accountant out loud, but I loved everything else that came with it. But I love more now that I very openly say what I do, and I love it.
And does Tom know that you're not a New Zealander now?
Well, he certainly knows I'm not a fashion designer. I live in activewear.
Well, and then for the final steps, that's an incredible story, and that shift. I think something I'm noticing about you is you're really great at choosing to spot the benefits and the opportunities or the good things within this. And so you say no regrets. This actually set you up so that you could move into this next stage of your life.
Yep.
You started Avocado Baby in your living room with a newborn.
Yes.
So what did you have to relearn or unlearn from your finance life to actually build Avocado Baby? And if you want to tell the listener as well about Avocado Baby.
Yeah, so Avocado Baby is, we do pre and postnatal yoga, but it's not really about the yoga. It's about the community. The best time in the classes are the start, where we open up and talk about how we actually are. So for me, that connection piece is everything. And then I teach birth education with partners. And then now I'm a doula, which means I actually support mums and their partners in meeting their babies. The thing that really stood out for me that was so different from the previous world was when you're in the corporate world, there's a lot of saying things to be heard. When you're in this world, you're trying not to say anything so that the people that you're supporting can be seen. Does that make sense? So you're trying to lift up the people around you to be seen and heard and feel protected and safe. Whereas in a corporate setting, it's kind of the opposite. You're all sort of trying to walk on top of each other to be the one that's seen and heard, because there is this sort of ladder. And, there's successful attachments to that, like promotions or more money or whatever it is. And for me, I've never been one that's attached to money. I actually hate money. I would love to live on a commune where we trade in eggs and milk, So it's a very different system from this world of merit by awards or recognisable promotions or recognisable moments in time where you've excelled, to now my work, the measure of success in my work now is not what I can show for myself as being, well, I did this and I did that. My measure of success is how my women feel with me and how they feel in that room. So I am purely measured by the way others feel, not by what I can show for my business. Does that make sense? It's such a different scale of what lights me up. It's not what I achieved. It's more, how did I help others achieve what they want? And it's such a different space. So you have to be more gentle. It's almost less is more, saying less, not having to be the party in the room. You're actually trying to lift everyone else up around you rather than being the centre of attention.
My question is, do you think you could have been the yoga instructor and the support to women before having your own baby, if let's say you realize that yoga was your calling at 17, 18, let's say, would you have been the same yoga teacher that you currently are now? Like, what would that, do you think that would have been possible? Or do you think you needed to have that sort of crack open moment of becoming a mum and watching the outside world and go, what is this for? Like living through that and going, I think I need something else to be the practitioner you now are.
Do you definitely? I don't think I could have done what I do now if I hadn't have gone through that pathway. And to be honest, spent a lot of time traveling in different cultures and seeing how they are, seeing how women are as well and how mothers are with their kids. I think life experience has helped me with that. And certainly when we spend a lot of time in South America, you know, very poor countries, but seeing the value placed upon mothers in different settings really lit up for me how differently everyone does it. You know, there's not one path here. I would love to change so many things about even how we do things in Australia in terms of, you know, continuity of care. I know that's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but the way we support mothers even before they've had a baby, around birth education, around mothers groups. So I don't think I could have executed that in a way that I'm doing now if I hadn't have had that life experience. And certainly becoming a mother, you know, that opens it up too. But when I did the doula course with Rhea Dempsey, and she's a bit of a superstar in the birth world, she's kind of the queen of birth. She's more of a birth activist now, actually. She's in her 70s and she's been to over 2,000 births. She's extraordinary. Some of the girls in the room, so we spent a year with her, and that again cracked me open in another way I've never experienced. Some of the girls in the room weren't mothers, and they would be and are the most beautiful doulas going around, and they haven't had that experience. So I think it depends on the person you are. I would never say to somebody you couldn't do this work if you aren't a mother yourself. But for me personally, it required a cracking open. And I think the life I had to that point almost got me to boiling point of seeing that moment where what are we doing on this earth? Like why are we all just plodding along and not thinking about why are we here? I didn't have that moment at 17. I had it at 34. And I think I needed that moment to really bring me into this work fully.
Yeah. I'd love to quote you. You say, the world is education, people are education, and time is education. I mean, you just spoke to that so beautifully. Yeah.
And I think the world is education. I think, you know, I love education. I'm always doing so much education now, and I find I love learning. I always have. But this is where the schooling system in many ways needs to see its place too, I think, that it is a building block for then us as 17, 18-year-olds, however old we are when we leave school, to go and use that education to find more. You know, it doesn't end there, which we all know. But I feel like there's so much pressure on that moment that is the end, when in reality, for me, it was just a building block to go and explore and utilise those wonderful foundations that I had at school to go and then see the world and work out what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like it's not success unless it's tied up in this bow at the end. And I think that's what you're speaking to now. And that question that Dan brought up, we did actually have somebody reach out regarding the idea of feeling stuck, getting the score, doing the things, and now feeling like, but what now? And I love that your story is like, but you might not know right now. Get what you can from this experience, because you just don't, like, it might be the birth of a child. It might be the opportunity to meet a mentor. It might be an exercise class you take. You actually don't know where that next inspiration comes from. But who's to say that everything you're learning in these moments of feeling like I'm not where I want to be won't be really instrumental in taking you to that next play?
A famous quote that's attributed to Carl Jung, so he's a very famous psychiatrist, psychologist, is around, well, life doesn't start until 40. You know, so there's, based on what you're saying.
Experimental.
Yeah, exactly right. So there's this thing of all the things you're accruing. And often what Loz and I talk about is school's a place where learning occurs. It's different to education. So it just happens for a point in time, and it's trying to set you up to move into the
world, yeah.
And education is, as you said, timeless.
Yeah.
It just keeps happening, right, throughout your life. Is it okay if I tap into this accounting brain of yours? Because I'm really interested. So you've gone into this purpose-led, heart-led work.
Yeah.
But you've got this amazing skill set of helping businesses operate. What are the accounting skills or knowledge that have helped you as a small business owner?
Not tax.
Not tax. As in, don't pay tax, or are you saying?
Just don't pay
No,
tax.
definitely.
Well, it's so funny because everyone says, oh, so you know how, you must be really good at tax. I was like, I've never touched tax in my life.
There's a lot of different specialties in
A lot
accounting.
of different specialties. What I've used most, to be honest, and what's probably helped me most from that previous life is actually the ability to communicate with anybody. Because when you're thrown in the deep end, particularly the deep end I went into both at PricewaterhouseCoopers and Sony, they were both really good at putting you in the room with anybody. And it wasn't about, well, you're the junior, so therefore you don't get exposure to, you know, people of a higher level in clients, or certainly at Sony of going overseas on your own and meeting with the MDs and the CFOs. They really trusted you to have those conversations. So that's something PricewaterhouseCoopers, if anyone was thinking about going into something like that as a grad program, that exposure, I think, it really sets you up to be able to talk to anybody. And people from all walks, because your clients are in different industries. Or in my experience, I'd be going to, say, the head office of Nike, which was a really fun brand to go and see. And then the next moment you're going to the head office of Bridgestone Tyres, you know, and you're speaking to the mechanics about how many tyres they've got. So it's really interesting. The ability to be able to talk to anybody was what I took most from my time in that realm. And the confidence then also, when you're pregnant, everyone's coming from different walks of life. Yes, you have a common theme of why you're there, because you're all having a baby, but everyone comes from different walks. So in that room, when you're teaching childbirth education, you've got to make it open and relevant to everybody. Yes, you're all there for the same reason, but you might have in your class, I've had an obstetrician, and then I've had a paramedic, and then I've had a policeman, I've had tradies, accountants, but you've got to somehow make that room interesting for everybody. I feel like all those years in that world, the thing I take most of it from it most is the ability to communicate across the board to different people from different walks.
Are there certain skills under that, like to communicate? Because communication is such a great thing, and it's a really common theme that we hear from people that come on the pod.
Yeah,
about the need, if you're a young person or anyone in your career, about focusing on building your communication skills. When it works really well, when you know you've connected a group of people, or you've engaged with them, or you think of all those meetings that you had where you were somehow able to communicate clearly. There's some skills or like some ways that you approach it that you could share.
The skills that I take on are that everyone's just human. So sometimes I remember going into meetings, you know, say I was 26 and I'm going in to meet a 50-year-old white man, which, you know, often was the case, who'd obviously had a wealth of experience. And sometimes like, how am I going to connect with this person? You know, how will he validate or see me as of anything of worth when the wealth of experience that he has is so much greater than I can offer? And then I would always just try and find some common ground, you know, or I'd say to myself, well, you know, I really like all my dad's mates. He's just kind of like my dad's mates. Yeah. He's just a human. And if I have to, you know, I would often, you know, drop myself down to a gag or try to make light of something. Or he would say, oh, I play golf on the weekend. Oh, my dad plays golf. You know, something like that. You know, just try to find a commonality between you rather than seeing someone as not on your level. They might have a daughter the same age as you if they were like that. They would have a level of respect for you in that moment as well. Because if they're looking at you as a young girl coming into a meeting, or a young person coming into a meeting, they also want to make it comfortable for you. So my advice is always don't be afraid of what seems like a really impossible situation or a big challenge or that you shouldn't be there. If you've been given an opportunity to go and have a conversation with someone, see it as just that. See it as an opportunity. If you stuff up, it doesn't matter. You can just say, oh, you know, I was nervous today. Be open, be honest. You know, there's no point in pretending to be something that you're not. If you are much younger and you're a grad and you're not sure what to do, be open and honest and say, this is the first time I've ever had a meeting like this. So just be, you know, can you go easy on me? And I know that's hard to say as well, but if you can drop yourself down into your human, like I do in childbirth education, sometimes I do have people there. I have a lot of midwives and I think, oh God, I'm not a midwife. I feel like such an imposter teaching childbirth education. And it took me years to get over that, years to get over the fact that I'm not a midwife and yet I'm teaching childbirth education. I'm also not an obstetrician. The very first thing I open with at the start of all of my courses is just that. I am not a midwife. I am not an obstetrician. I'm not here to take the place of the wonderful clinical team you already have around you. I am here as an additional person to your team, so that there is no pretense that I'm trying to be something that I'm not. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important, because if we are trying to pretend to be something we're not, it all unravels pretty quickly. You'll find yourself in a sticky situation. Just don't. Just be yourself. And yes, if it all goes, can I say this? If it all goes tits up, it all goes tits up. But at least you've been honest and you can walk out of there and say, hey, I gave it a crack with the skills that I have.
I actually think acknowledging the thing you're afraid of in the space that makes you feel afraid with the people that potentially make you feel afraid, it just takes the fear out of it. I've done that so many times, like, giving a speech or something, you're like, this is not where I love to be. Can you please just help me? And everyone wants you to most people want you to succeed.
Everyone wants you to succeed.
And if they don't realize what it is that's holding you back, then they can't help you.
No.
So I think that's a huge lesson that I've learned in my life, is just to acknowledge the thing that makes me uncomfy.
Yep.
Because that allows people to then come in and go, well, let me help you here. And I think, especially in my 20s, you think you've got to have it all figured out. You think you've got to be, don't you think? Like, don't forget me. I think you think you're supposed to be professional.
So much
and so many, you can't possibly be. You haven't been on the earth long enough.
No.
Yeah.
And people really respect that, I think. And I think it is a bit of a defense mechanism as well. If I say this up front, I can't be judged for it, or I can't possibly, they can't think that I think I'm more than I am. So I definitely do that.
Yeah.
But it's always met with grace, it's met with, okay, she doesn't think she's more than she is. And it's not about downplaying what you are. I still want to do a really good job of what I'm offering you, but I also want you to know that I'm not trying to take the place of something else.
Sounds like expectation management too. Like that's a key thing, being aware of that.
Yeah.
Loz, I was laughing because I remember I met my wife when I was 19. So I did meet her as my wife. So we went out first.
You're my wife.
Should we just do this?
You're my wife now.
But I remember sitting there having a coffee with some friends when I just turned 20. And Elle, my wife, was there. And I remember saying out loud to everyone, all right, I've got to get my shit together. I'm 20.
I know.
I had no idea what I was talking about.
I was saying that at 34.
I had no idea. Yeah, I think I said it again at 25 and then 30 and then probably at 40 too. Well, I guess the thing that I was wondering about is, so you've got 3 kids.
Yes.
Given that the world is pretty focused on success and in a traditional way about, being famous, being known enough, how many people follow you, how much money you earn.
Yeah, the metrics are really out there now, aren't they, in terms of what success
is? It is. So I guess what's the key message if you were talking to your kids?
Yes.
What would be your way to talk about success to them, to set them up for success?
Well, we do this, Tom and I, because, we're both, Tom's a creative and I'm in sort of a women's-centred, heart-led world. Brain. So it's obvious that we're both not really financially driven. Success for me, and it's funny, I say this to my girls already, I don't say the word necessarily success, but, we do every night talk about you can be whatever you want to be, you can do whatever you want to do, just be good humans, and that's success for us. Going through the route that we went through to both arrive at where we are now, there definitely was an element of, success means something completely different, because, I can't sit here and say success for me was always measured by the women around me and how they feel. Success for me for a long time was attributed to those metrics that are more common, around your promotion or your title or money and all those things that we are driven by maybe when we're a bit younger. But success for me now, honestly, is to have time. Success is time for me. To have time with my kids, to have time to do the things that I really want to do, to have time with Tom. And if I can get to the point where I feel like my time is split in a really balanced way. I don't think any mum can say this at the moment because our time is it's so tricky to find that balance. But success for me would be to be able to realistically say I feel like my time is well spent between those three things, between doing my work, spending time with my husband and spending time with my kids.
You also said too that other than having a heart-led career in your pre-pod form, you said success is using my voice, which was the thing I was told to quieten. And I'm wondering how that plays a role in the way you're parenting now, 3 girls.
Yes. So I'm listening to a lot of your podcasts. It's a bit of a theme, actually. A lot of your guests on here were told they talk too much at school. They're distracting everybody else, and I was nodding my head, and everyone. It's the same.
Maybe that's just a blanket thing they send to everyone.
Maybe it is the template.
We need to broaden our guest area. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, maybe. And that was definitely for me, in their shed a few years ago. I was like, my gosh, I must have talked a lot. Like every single one. You talk too much, you're too loud. But then in the same essence, that's my business now, is my voice and my ability to talk and hopefully connect mums and let them find their voice. So it's interesting how what's kind of told to quieten can very much become your superpower. And I say that to my girls now, use your voice in a way that helps you work out what you want to do. So my kids are really different. One's more introverted than the others. One is really noisy and the other one's kind of in between. But they will, I can already see it, use their voices in different ways. So it's interesting how we can all utilise our voices in different ways and it doesn't have to be in the same way. I really encourage my kids, because I have followed my passion now. Please don't get stuck into that hole of you have to get a score and then utilise that score for something that is meaningful to that score. I want you to do something that lights you up. But equally, I'm stuck because I want them to travel and go and do amazing things. And if there is a pathway to that, it's okay to follow a different pathway that's not necessarily your passion, to find the other passion or to live out your dream of being away. But then I might lose all 3 kids and they might never come back.
But then you've got places to visit.
And then I've got places to visit.
I'm just struck by what you said about communication. And I'm just considering, I think it's taken me a really long time to get to a place of knowing what I want to communicate and feeling confident. Because I think in my schooling, I felt like it was communicating in the right way, or what was expected, or I'm going to say the right way. And sometimes that wasn't always aligned with what I wanted to say, but it was the right thing to say, right? And I'm just really considering what my kids actually like to communicate. And I would say my daughter is a bit of a justice warrior. She loves to communicate for others. She's very nurturing and she wants to make sure that what she says is in alignment with her values. But my son communicates for different reasons. He communicates for curiosity and he communicates for entertainment, Dan or laugh. Like, he's the jokester, he sings, he's very charismatic. But both of them use communication for different things. And you were just saying that about your girls, that they communicate for different things and for different reasons. And I'm interested in that too. Like, is that a little glimpse into where they're going to head, what is going to be their heart-led? Yeah, I just find that really interesting. I'm not considered, not so much the communication, but what is it that they're drawn to communicate about as kids? If you think about your girls, are they looking at different things in terms of what they're trying to communicate? Like, is one about entertaining? Is one about friendships and getting to know and getting to understand different people? Like, what is it that they're looking at?
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because when I'm reflecting on my own kids and what they talk about, like my eldest, she's very much like Tom. She's going to be a creative, and Tom's a creative. She's a real wordsmith. They're all really into their books and love reading, but she, from a very young age, would twist words around to make jokes. She has a joke book. She makes up jokes of her own. She's a wordsmith. She's always playing with loves language and always has. She was very much a talker before she walked. She was a blob until she was 18 months old. Because she could ask for things. She's just like, I'm not going to move. Mum, just get me whatever I need, because she could talk so well. She has a love of language. And so she uses the language in a way that I know will guide her, I think, in her vocation. And I want to really encourage that, because I see such a passion in that. And I would be devastated that love of language gets eaten up by AI or gets eaten up by the the world at the moment, because that is pure magic, right? To see her, like the alliterations, and it's remarkable what she comes out with. And that all comes from her love of reading. But my second, she's really curious about the world. So her language is more, it's a curiosity. Why does that work like that? And she's probably more nature driven. She's more of an outdoorsy girl. She loves the way things work. So I would say she's probably got more of a brain like mine, probably more structured in her thinking, but then quite whimsical in her approach to life. And so I dare say, if I was to see where her passions went, I would hate for that to be stifled and that she was stuck in a office, tapping away at a computer, because she's so interested in the world. So it's really interesting how you see your kids in such a different way, which takes me back to maybe how my mum saw me go and work in a man's world, because she saw that I had maybe this ability to talk to anyone and I could go places and see things. Yeah. So maybe that was her projecting that on me.
Yeah.
And then my third, she's only still young, but she is just hilarious. She's actually really funny, and she's a real go-getter and likes to do dramatic effects, and so hers is more comical. It's really with her language.
Yes.
And she sees the funny side of everything that the others don't see, and interesting.
It is interesting. Well, we talk about play a lot, don't we? It just gave me this moment of like, maybe there's another little thing we can consider in terms of who our children, or what to sort of support in our children. And maybe the thought is like, don't work out what that's going to look like in terms of career, but just validate what that skill and what that interest is. It doesn't have to be a job. It can just be, totally, and it can be just nurtured, right?
But then interesting, you've got 3 kids from the same family, and they would all learn so differently in that education system, because of just those comments we've made about the way they use language. I know they all learn really differently. So is the system that they're in going to support the different needs in terms of how they read and take on the world? One's definitely more pragmatic. One definitely likes theory. I can already see that.
Yeah.
For me personally, I'm more pragmatic. Like the amount of online courses I have paid for and never opened the login because I need to be in a room with somebody. And story for me is so important. Pragmatic examples, you can show me a picture of a body, but get out a skeleton and really teach me how it works. That's the side of learning that I love. So we have to work out ways to meet those demands for different people's brains, which in a system is so hard,
But, underneath all this talk about different kinds of learning, you're talking about application, which is one form of, it's a proven way of, you need to do it. You need to actually be able to apply it. I'm interested to think, Flick, around this, because there's this quote, listening to what you're saying, there's 2 things that jumped out to me. One thing listening to you is this idea of, so they talk about saying we have 2 lives. So the first one is we have 2 lives, and the second one starts when you realise we only have one.
Yes.
And then there's this other part that jumps out. It's attributed to Confucius or someone like that.
You brought it to the conversation.
But it's this and then the second thing, listening to you, because you talking about success for you now is time. So you've realised time's finite. It's the most precious thing.
Yeah.
And then there's this other piece that is in the book, Regrets of the Dying. The number one regret is that people have on their deathbed. So it was written by a palliative care nurse.
Yep.
Is living a life that wasn't for myself. As in, I knew what I probably should have done, but I did what others thought I should do.
Yes.
It sounds like a shift for you, and that what you're hoping your kids realise is that they're aware of the path that they should take and they should back themselves.
Yeah. And, and I feel like that exactly what you said. I was living a life thinking I had one, and then there was that huge shift, and now I feel like I'm really living it. Like I genuinely, and I feel very privileged to be able to say this, I genuinely love my job. I love, I love seeing my mums. I love teaching birth education. And now I love being in a room watching babies being born. It's the most addictive thing you could ever imagine. And I get home to the kids and I apologise as a doula. I'm sorry I was away for X amount of hours or days. And it lights me up so much if I've missed something, like you talked about before, missing an assembly or something. And Etty said to me, I must have missed something at school. I can't remember what it was, but I turned to her and I said, Etty, I'm so sorry I missed X, Y, and Z. And she turned back and she said to me, Mum, but you are doing the most important work in the whole world. I'm going to cry. You're helping babies be born. And I was like, oh my gosh, that to be validated by your own children, you know, and they said to me, you know, we know that the work you're doing is so important that it's okay for you to miss these little things. And that they could even call their things little in that moment, when maybe me missing an assembly that they were singing in that moment was probably the biggest thing to them. I was like, oh gosh, you've seen some perspective, which at that age I think is very hard to have because your world is everything. And I always say to them, I don't care what you do, but I want you to have this feeling. I want them to have this feeling. And they get the same from Tom because he has the same feeling about his work. He loves what he does. So I think we're very lucky in that respect. And, you know, Tom says to me, Flick, it's not luck. It's, you know, we're fortunate that we love what we do, but we've also carved this out. And there's a lot of sacrifice in that because we don't meet the other metrics of success. You know, we don't meet those other metrics. But what we do meet is we can hand on our heart say that we really love what we do. And I think if I'm looking at my deathbed, you know, hopefully in a long time, you know, a long time away, I don't think I will regret the path that I've chosen, which is really big for me.
Well, and there's some research studies they have out there about, you know, earning a certain amount, and then once you hit a point, it doesn't actually change your happiness from it. And they've done it quite a number of times, and it's been really longitudinal. So you hit this point of, it sounds like you guys are aware of what's enough.
Yeah.
And then you're choosing different ways to try and put that in place. Yeah. But I'm interested to know, given all that we've covered.
Yes.
And for this person that's listening, because I think the great thing I'm hearing from you is you were stuck, or you realise, you see that there's all these people out there typing, doing a thing, and you go, I don't think this is for me. You made a shift and you're continuing to chase down that path.
Yep.
So what's the smallest first step for someone who knows they need to make a change, but they're scared to make it? What's that one first step, no matter how small?
Well, I think the first step is acknowledging that wherever you are, probably 90% of people around you are feeling the same thing. Acknowledging that you're not the only one in that spot. And it's okay to not love what you're doing all the time. You also don't have to make, I mean, my example was a big shift because it did happen quite quickly, but there was a trigger in that I was pregnant, you know, and I was going to have time off. You know, so there was quite an easy step away from that previous life into the new because of the big event of having a baby. You don't have to wait for a big event to start making small changes. I think small changes can come with things like go and talk to people in the industry that you want to be in. You know, for me, it was finding that amazing yoga teacher, you know, who was in such a different world from the world that I was in. So if you get the inclination from meeting someone that you never expected would lead a path for you into a completely different job or career, if something really lights you up, it doesn't mean you have to jump into it. You can just go and have a conversation because, again, coming back to that human side of us all, anyone would talk to, in my mind, if someone came up to me and said, please just tell me a little bit about your life or the day-to-day of what you do. I really am interested in what you do. I think we'd all actually feel quite chuffed that someone thought that what you do is a worthwhile job or something they'd like to go into. So I think just trusting humans around you, that most people on the surface and underneath are pretty good deep down, and anyone would like to have a conversation with you. So I would start with conversation. I wouldn't start with go and buy lots of online courses because you won't feel anything through that. You need to feel a change, I think, through communication and people. Because if you're going to make a change, unless you're, you know, a web developer or someone who's in their room on their own in a solitary kind of role, usually the most important thing is to get to know the kinds of people you'll be working with to make a change. So it doesn't mean going and doing something drastic. I think it just means starting to immerse yourself into the change before you make it. Just feel it out, you know. And for young people, that can feel quite scary, I think, and it can feel out of their depth. But like I said, we're all just plodding along this life together, you know, and I think people genuinely want to help you. So just ask.
I think saying the thing out loud is really helpful. Dan, I've had this opportunity a few times where either we talk about the pod or we talk about something really passionate about, even just little things like I do a fair bit of tutoring work. Again, that was something that I've never really advertised, but it's just once you start saying the thing out loud, when you start saying these things I believe in, all of a sudden this whole other side opens up. They're like, I didn't even know people were waiting there for that. But I think we're so scared to say the thing out loud when it's not fully realised.
But it's okay to be in limbo. I think we're all a bit scared of being in limbo.
I think so too.
I do this thing, but I'm kind of thinking about this other aspect. There's no failure in being in no man's land. You know, that's where the growth comes of, okay, I'm in no man's land. Yes, I can't attach to either side of the street at the moment. But that means that you're thinking about progress, right? You're not just going to stay on that side of the street because that's safe. You've got to be able to pull yourself away from that curb and gently try other streets, you know, because otherwise we'll never see what's on the other side. And that for me that's what you'll regret always. I mean, I know so many quotes would talk about that, but you're always going to regret, you know, even with the kids, we love going and jumping in the bay. And, you know, it's the same thing. You get to the bay and you're like, what am I thinking? It's freezing. And my kids now, their mantra is, Mom, you'll never regret a swim, because I've been saying that to them since they were 3 years old.
Yeah.
You know, and just on Sunday, we went down and the kids got straight in. It was freezing cold. It was 5 o'clock. There was waves. And I was like, oh, I don't think I'm going to get in today. And all 3 of them chanted at me, Mom, you'll never regret a swim. I was like, oh, okay, jumped in. Of course, it was amazing. But I could have easily just gone home and I would have regretted not getting in. So I think if you can take that into life a little bit, that there is no failure in the frazzle time, the no man's land.
In between.
And little things add up, right? So
things add up, yeah.
Yeah, one conversation sometimes is all it takes, hey, Dan?
this is very true. Well, and that's what I actually heard from you today. So your pathway was interesting. I think there was 3 points where there were conversations. It was 3 conversations that completely shifted for you, like that person you stalked. We're not promoting stalking.
I did stalk her.
The person you stalked, you and Tommy having a conversation.
Yep, Tom.
And then there was a third conversation you were talking about with you and when Eddie was giving back to you what you've done.
Yeah. And that validation from your own kids, I mean, she's only 9, but, you know, that really sat with me. And, you know, in every birth I come back from, they've always got a big sign at the door saying, "We're so proud of you, Mum."
Wow.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I mean, that's Tom as well. But Tom has been I mean, that's the other thing, having the support of your partner or, you know, whoever you've got around you there's a lot to be said for that. I, in all honesty, probably wouldn't have jumped ship if I didn't meet Tom. I know I would have done something else, but he is very much like, why not? And having him was everything, really. And his family, you know, just do it.
Well, Tom has also been on this podcast, so now's a good point to say if someone's listening, you might go check out Tom's episode, earlier episode 2.
He's a good egg. We'll keep him.
So it's about progress, not necessarily the success. That's the
I think if you're always progressing, you can never have regrets about, well, I didn't jump in the bay today. And that's a regret.
Well, Loz and I talk about this. So we say with the podcast, even for us, it's like indicators of progress and signals. Like, are we getting the right signals that, you know, this is worth? And then that's led to us now, Laura, putting ourselves out there for this live event that we're doing on September the 9th, right? We're putting ourselves out there.
I've booked.
Yeah, good. I think it'll be great.
It's great. Plug away, guys. Go.
Yeah.
Oh no, that wasn't me trying to. It was us thinking of like what's another thing for it.
And it's big to put yourself out there. It's hard because you feel like imposters. But again, you've gone to the other side of the street a little bit. You're like, okay, this is another opening. We're coming away from our lounge room out into the world a little bit.
It's funny, I had this conversation with Stacey, who's our trainer, Flick and I was saying I feel a little uncomfortable, and Dan always, again, tries to reframe this to me. I feel a little uncomfortable being a salesperson. And she was saying, and Dan again would say this too, you're not selling like some scammy thing. You're trying to offer an opportunity of something you truly believe in. It's not,
I know.
Well, there's a difference. If we're talking about what we're doing, so if we're doing that thing in September and we say, hey, here, I've got this for you, you should come, you should do that, as opposed to, well, if you want to be able to have better conversations with your kids, this might be of help. If it's not, that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's very different. Like I used to see it the same as I used to sell every day to get kids to buy into maths.
Yeah.
Because kids don't sit down at the start of a maths lesson and go, you know what, I can't wait. But by the end of the year, I'd have my bloody class, like they love maths because every day I'd have to say to them, all right, well, so why should they actually bother sitting down and getting involved in a lesson on multiple? Well, I need to make really great connections and make it real for them, you know. But that's just, we're trying to help people, right? Sounds like that's what you're about.
It's the same when you, as an adult, seek out education, right? So I'm always seeking out things to do. you would look at all these different courses. All right, how do they structure the content? What's the content? How do they structure the content? How do they give the content to us? What's the presenter like? We do our research as adults of how we want to receive that information.
Yep.
Whereas kids don't get that. They'll have different teachers teaching different things, a curriculum maybe they're not interested in. So that, having inspiring teachers and different ways of receiving that information is so important.
Any workshop I start, I normally say, I count how many people there are. And then so if a workshop's running for 6 hours, I'll work out the collective number of human hours. And I say, you're never going to get that back. So I need to make sure that this is your time.
But isn't that great that you acknowledge
100%.
and then just throwing information?
Man, it puts pressure on me. The right kind of
puts
pressure.
pressure on you. Yeah.
Felicity, you have been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the way that you just shared. So you communicate your story so well. So when you said that that's a thing you took, I was like, oh yeah, you're a really brilliant communicator. But thank you for the way that you just honestly shared all the different parts, this really amazing shift. I think for people listening who get a really high score and then feel beholden to it, that it's driving them, I think that's a really helpful one. Or for anyone just listening that's seeking a shift, you've shared some really helpful insights. So thank you so much for doing this. And then we like to finish with a tradition, don't we, Laura?
Oh.
We're going to do the high five. But if you do know someone else that's got a really helpful story or some insights to share, reach out to us at morethanascorepod@gmail.com. And then Felicity, we're also on Instagram. We've got a what's the handle again, Laura?
It's More Than a Score Pod on Instagram. And if you go there is a link to this event that we're talking about that we really do believe in, called what? What have we called it?
It's called a live conversation about success.
Yeah, about success. So if you're interested in that, that's the place to go.
Come along, September the 9th. It will be fun, and we're going to have cake, aren't we? I mean, not that we're trying to bribe it. There will be cake.
Anniversary of the pod.
But Flick, can we do a crisp high five?
Crisp high five.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Right.
Oh dear, we do this at home with girls.
Do you? So you practice a lot?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, you're a righty. I write with my left, but I high five.
Okay,
all right.
are you ready?
Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
That was good.